Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. This is Disconnect to Connect, One Word Conversations. One Word Conversations is a relationship building self-discovery conversation designed to invite you to look at your language. Many times we come up with all the lovely words that we can think of and still find ourselves in a state of disconnection, mainly because words don't just come with definitions, they come with expectations, stories, and even energies. I'm learning. But I suggest by having a one word conversation, you can learn more about yourself, the person that you're speaking with, and just possibly build on that relationship. One Word Conversations is brought to you by IamWilliamBrown.com, a place to help you be yourself and live your life. One way that I spotlight what's available there, I don't know where I just went there for a second, is our U cards. Our U cards are an intention setting cards that are a part of the Beyond the Shell series. Beyond the Shell series is a series of children's books, finding you beyond what protects you and the journey to stay you. And there's also a journal of hello, you are complete. So here are the cards that I picked for this conversation to set the intention. I am lovable, you are lovable, and there is no one youer than you. I think lovable, embracing lovable is the theme of this conversation. This is the moment where I invite you to like, share, ask questions, comments. If you're watching on YouTube, to subscribe so you can get some future episodes alerts. So this is another one of those surprise episodes, with the mystery words. That's what people are calling it, the mystery words. So my guest has basically taken on the challenge of being surprised with the word live on the show. So as I do, I bring in a guest so we can have a conversation. Happy today.
Happy today. Good morning.
Good morning. This is the moment where I invite my guests to introduce themselves however it feels comfortable to them.
Awesome. Thanks for having me again, William. My name is Abby Spindelman, and I am a creative, a teacher, and founder of Intimacy Live, where I help women and some very brave men explore emotional, physical, and energetic intimacy.
Wonderful. Now, if Abby looks familiar, Abby is our resident guest. I mean, it's like at least once a month, and I think this month, because of the recap show that you were on again. So yeah, it is always incredible to have you on the show. So I'm so glad that you were able to be here today.
Same.
So are you ready? Right?
As ready as I can be.
With all the words in the world, and that I can think of, and that are part of my vocabulary and mess with my mind on a daily basis. This is the word that has come up for me and for this conversation here. So the word is um, test. Our one word is test for today. So the question of the morning is, how does the word test land for you?
Yeah, wow. I kind of got like a little sweaty and a little nervous. I was like, oh boy, here we go. um, and I think that is because the word test to me has sort of two major meanings. And the
Mhm.
first one is that, like, do I meet somebody else's standards?
Mm,
Like, can I answer the questions right and as they are expected?
right.
And the second one is more of the innovator's experience of test, whereas like, you have to test and innovate continuously,
Right.
and you learn, how to grow through that process. But the first definition gets me so nervous because I hate testing.
Right. Oh, yeah. That was something for myself that I felt that I hate multiple choice tests, right? It's like,
Mhm.
so it's like the right answer and the almost right answer and like, garbage, right? And it's just like, and so those were always get me. So, for me, test lands for me, as, um, trying to get it right. It's believing that there is a right answer and the wrong answer.
Mhm.
And if whatever I decide or whatever I believe, is the right answer, um, that's, it, that's where I go, right? I just kind of, yeah, it's just kind of understanding if it doesn't feel like it's right, or or something, and that right and wrong really causes me to, one, not want to take the tests, right? It's like not want to be. It's like I'm
Yeah,
out.
I
I
don't
just
want
don't
to be
want to be right,
judged,
right,
you
right.
know?
Right. And it's like, and I love the other way that you brought into the conversation of, with innovating, and it's like you are testing to get information. It's not the right or wrong answer. You're just getting information. How does this work? I'm going to do a series of tests to see um, how this works, and see how it can work in, this situation and other situations. And that's the land of possibility, right? That
Right.
is that. And so for me, there's like no stress to that. It's like, okay, we're just being curious. Let's see, can you do this? Can you do that? But it doesn't, most of the times, it doesn't show up like that for me at all.
Right. And, I think that for me, that perspective of testing and innovating, I know that that's essentially how the scientific method works. You have this idea, you do a bunch of tests, and then you see, like, okay, was I right? But not was I right or wrong. It's like, and if I'm wrong, it's bad. It's like, oh, then that actually wasn't true. And so, like, I can find something else that is true.
Right.
And that perspective only, or I guess I adopted that perspective as of maybe 5 years ago, in
Mm,
the sense that I really started to explore this idea of right and wrong, and how, of course, there are certain lines in the sand of like how you treat someone
right.
and, your overall like intentions and actions.
Right.
But when we're relating to relationship, when we're relating to another human being, it's really hard to say that there's a right and a wrong way to engage with someone. And
Right.
that, um, if you have that space of curiosity, and this is kind of like where Intimacy Alive came from, is this idea that you're both bringing your own unique flavor and experience and uh, what's the word? Filters
Mm,
to a relationship.
right.
And, if you're bringing really beautiful things and like lots of space and, um, like lots of appreciation and all the good things to a relationship, then like more than likely that's going to thrive.
Right.
But if you come to the table and start to judge the other person or shut down or, are, emotionally abusive, it's like all of those things, it's like that relationship is going to wither and die. And
Right.
so I started to recognize that it's like every person has our own unique blend. And so when you come to the table, there's no real right and wrong, but you have to learn the like rightness of how to relate
Right.
to somebody in a way that it'll thrive.
Right. I totally get that. I totally get that. I've just remembered another way that, Tess has shown up for me.
Mm.
And I think how it was introduced to me, right? So because it was
Mm.
how how I was a kid, my mom would say, "You are testing me," right? You know,
Mm.
and it's like, and
Yep.
that was my cue,
Testing
right?
my patience, right?
And it's like, and I think that's it turned into my curiosity filter. And
Mm.
it's like, did I ask one too many questions, right? Right? And it's
Yeah.
like, all right, that's there's one question, there's two questions, third question, too much, right?
Right.
And it's like, all right, we're done. Test this
Right.
over, and going there,
Mm.
and I really, got it's like I can laugh at it now, but as a kid, I was like, gee whiz, like I'm just trying to get information, right? And it's like,
Right.
and and there were moments, and I give my mom a lot of grace now, and I didn't for a long, and sometimes I get real,
Yeah.
regret and all that, a single parent, right? And all the things with with four kids and
Wow.
yeah, and they're, me, just like, it's like me as one of them, right? So it's like,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, if it makes you feel any better, I was my mom's last kid, so
so
yeah, I
so
get you.
right, so it is, so it was one of those things that, very curious, and I made that mean that my curiosity will get me in trouble. My
Mm,
testing people's patience, their their knowledge, whatever I was doing, how I was showing up for people, um, wasn't right, right? It's
mhm,
and so there were many times that I found myself, and I wonder if I took that to school, that I don't I shouldn't test people, and I don't like tests, right?
mhm.
It's like,
Right, because it's testing, it means then, like, there's a bad outcome, like, there's a limit that
right,
you're finding, and it's like, that's not something that most people are comfortable with. It's like, we don't wanna find our limit, we wanna find our expansion.
right. And the fact that I felt, because I have the label of dyslexia, and so the fact that I learn differently, and many times in schools, in school testing practices or way, uh, I just couldn't process the information quickly that way,
Yeah.
because and the stress level. I would say that I was a bad test taker, and
Mhm,
it wasn't. In many cases, it wasn't that I was a bad test taker, because I was like, okay, I know this. How did I get that wrong? And
mhm,
that's, it wasn't. I felt that it wasn't that they were trying to see what I knew, and
mm.
that's why I felt
Yes.
with the multiple choice questions. It's like, just ask me, right? If it's true or false or right or wrong, or or just kind
Mhm.
of explain.
Yeah.
That's enough, right?
Yeah, and I find that, like, sharing that story reminds me of, like, oftentimes testing comes at that point of feeling like, uh, you're trying to be proven wrong almost,
Hmm,
you know? It's
yeah,
like, I wanna know that you either know this or that you don't, not, like, what you're actually gonna do with that information.
right.
And I think that, my previous career was in education, of sorts. I worked in the interior design industry and worked with schools to help them innovate their learning spaces. And there's
Hmm,
this huge
great. Oh, wow.
paradigm shift. Yeah, and it was so incredible because there's this huge paradigm shift going on where, like, we're starting to realize that the model of education that we have right now was essentially created when the Industrial Revolution happened. And
Right.
it was much more about, like, getting people out the door and, like, used to this sort of like assembly line mentality
Mm,
Whereas now we have to like actually teach people how to be continuous learners.
mm,
And that is very different. And I think like you and I are similar in that sense that, you know, I was a bad test taker in the same way because like I didn't know how to deal with stress
mm.
and the stress of not doing well was really high. But, you know, if I was to be in class or, you know, actually apply what I was learning, I was a very good student.
Right,
Um, but when it came to testing, like I just didn't do that well. Um, and and so what we're learning now is like I think people like you and I have sort of like made it through that system and have
right,
found our own way of living.
right,
Whereas, you know, now they're actually starting to adopt that perspective of like, how do we teach kids to be lifelong learners? Because half of the jobs that we're preparing them for don't even exist yet, you
right,
know,
right.
and that's like a whole nother level.
Right. We say things like that. I'm fascinated by that.
Mm,
We say that half of these jobs are not going haven't been created in 5 years, but we
mhm,
don't train or plan as if that is the case, right?
mhm,
Wait, so
mhm,
many times it feels like in our education we are still like these are the jobs, right? You're not, this is the way you should,
mhm.
these are the majors that you should have, not this expansive learning, right? To kind of be open to like what's ever coming 5 years from now or whatever's, being
Yeah.
there. There is, and I think for me, hopefully this is not a soapbox, but this is just coming up. It's education debt,
Mm,
college debt is, and I think the reason why it's considered a debt instead of investment is because what they're learning and paying for in some cases is not helping them. you
most
know
cases, I
right,
would
in most
argue.
cases, right, so it
Yeah.
is, you are being, so that's why it doesn't feel like an investment. If
Yeah.
we looked at that it's an investment, it's preparing me for the next. And it's like, I have said, sometimes sheepishly, that I've invested clearly over $100,000 in personal development.
Mhm.
Um,
Wow.
and
Mm.
and there are some times that I feel that it was a waste, you know, and it was like, what was I thinking, right?
Yeah.
And other times it just like appears out of me. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I guess I guess I'm still like using that. I guess it's still paying off, and it
Mm.
is really interesting that um, when we decide something's right or wrong or good or bad, or if how we are learning and how we look at our learning to kind of move us forward.
Yeah, and it's weird. I don't know if I said this on our show, the show that we did earlier. I said our show. It's
Right?
your show
Hey,
that I didn't
hey.
say. Yeah.
It's our show, right?
It's the Abby and William show. Oh my God. Um, but I was having this conversation earlier this week. That's why I'm like I can't remember if it was with you or another group that I'm a part of, but this idea that um, you know, investment. Oh, wait, where was I going with this? I totally lost my train of thought. You were talking about investment versus a debt. Oh, and so I feel like, just like you're saying, you know, personal growth work is that perspective of teaching people more of a growth mindset of
Right,
this whole idea of how do we, you know, grow and evolve as humans, no matter what age we are. Like we don't
right,
stop at age 25. We don't
right,
stop at age 35. You know, there are people that haven't reached the pinnacle of their career until well into their 60s or 70s. And
Right.
so, there's this whole idea that that you can really, as a person, actually live your life, not just work your life, and
Hmm.
in these set boundaries. But personal growth work is teaching you that you can evolve yourself, and have new discoveries that you learn about yourself no matter what
Right.
age you are.
Yeah.
And getting back to that, like the educational model that we're in, the investment would be like, okay, if we're doing this, and um it's not even a guaranteed outcome, but like you said, that like you can continually recognize where things that you've learned are still applicable,
Right.
like, and that they can be applicable in different situations, and
Right.
like, that would be a true investment.
Right.
Whereas right now, I think the problem that we're seeing, and like with my parents' generation, that is the case. Like they helped create new technology jobs.
Right.
And there was like a ton of innovation happening, when they were in their early 20s into 30s. And our generation, I feel like, is a little bit sort of stuck in this middle place where the educational testing systems
Right.
was more about measurement versus experience.
Right.
And I think that they can be both. And so, sort of tying this into the prompt earlier today, too, the I am lovable, you are lovable.
Right.
Oftentimes we apply that same testing model to relationships.
Hmm. Wow.
And I think that when we, and like for, in the service of your show, of this, disconnecting to connect, or sorry, this is one word conversations.
It's
But,
disconnect. Yeah, it's right. It's
okay,
both. Yeah, right. Disconnect to
it's
connect.
both.
One word conversation. So it's all
Okay.
there. Right.
Okay. So, that whole mentality, again, okay, I'm right. Great. So, that mentality, though, is that when we apply that same testing model, we make someone in our life right or wrong,
Hmm.
instead of creating learning opportunities to continually improve how we show up for each other.
Right.
And I think that is also one of the things that I've been like really not struggling with, but just in a growth spot around, is that instead of, you know, dating with the perspective of, if you don't pass this test, then you don't belong in my life,
Right. Mm.
approaching it from this perspective of like, here's a situation. I'm going to be really curious about how it goes when we're both in this, like this is a situation that's common in my life.
Right.
So let's see how we do going through this.
Wow.
And that's a totally different mindset, but it's
Right.
also like, I don't know, it's a hard habit to break.
Right.
Because I'm also of the mindset that I do think that there are some people that are better suited for each other, just because of the combination and the outcome and experience of the combination, not necessarily because like someone's bad or wrong.
Right. It's kind of interesting when you were saying what was coming up for me is I've been married for 30 years,
Mhm.
and there's parts of me that believe that there are a number of tests that I've passed, right? you
Mm.
know, and that when they show
Yeah.
up again, it's like, why are we still? I've passed this test, right? Right? It's like, why is this a
Right.
thing again, right? Right?
Right.
And it's like, the other way of that, I am always looking for information, always
Mhm.
gathering information, always saying, okay, well, that doesn't work, right?
Mhm.
It's like, so I
Right.
mean, so let's kind of go. And so there's not these files of tests that I've passed. Hey, look. I've, here are my grades, right? It's
Right. It's
like,
like, yes, I got you those flowers.
right.
One.
It's that type of thing. And just really, I think, it goes back to, the example of my mom is like, we don't want the testing, the ongoing, um, I don't know if it's discovering the right and wrong. And because I am, when there's a testing, or the feeling that you're being tested, right?
Mhm.
um, is that it's like I have the right answers, I
Mhm.
have the answer sheet, and
Mhm.
you're trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah. Right.
I've given you clues to,
Mhm.
maybe we've had some study work, right? And you kind of
Right.
see, or or maybe not. Maybe I
Yeah.
just created this test on the fly, right?
And you had no idea.
Right, pop quiz, right? Right, it's like, it's,
Yeah.
and I hated those too, because it's like, you're having a good old day, and and it's like, what, we're gonna have a pop quiz, right? And
Yeah,
it's
those
just
are the
like,
worst.
are you kidding me? Right? And
Uh,
it's like, in some cases, that's how my, that I show up in my life, and it's like, again, embracing that lovable, embracing that, um, there's no one newer than you, that
mm,
really kind of say that, what, um, um, I I'll figure this out.
mhm.
This'll,
Right.
there's no right answers, and there are right answers, right?
Yeah,
And
100%.
just kind of, and just go with that. It's like this our I've said something a couple times, and as I say, as coaches, sometimes for me, I'll say there's a lot of things that I say that I not yet believe or
Mm,
understand, right?
mm,
And
mhm,
so it's like, okay, where did that come from? And to go, and to really be able to, to say that, um I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm willing to discover that with you. This
yeah.
feel,
Ooh, like how powerful is
right.
that? To be, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's all right.
Just to be on the receiving end of that, to say, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm willing to figure it out with you. Like
Right,
how that is just something that is, you're validating this person,
right,
you know, you're recognizing that there's a challenge, and you're also validating the fact that you believe both of you to be capable enough to figure
right,
out a suitable answer, not
right,
necessarily a right answer,
right.
but
Absolutely.
something that like you're co-creating with that person. And
Right,
I think oftentimes, at least in my own sort of conditioning, that when I think of relationships, or when I've seen the examples of relationships in my life, it's sort of like there's one leader and then there's one follower. It's
right,
like there's one person that makes all the decisions that are at least outward facing, and the other
right,
person goes along with it. And
right,
to me, that is not co creation.
right,
That is compromise. And I know that compromise is necessary for two people to, like,
right,
create a life together. But if one person is over compromising, then that leads to resentment. And
right,
so if you co-create it, it's like you're in this constant iterative process of um, developing a solution that is sort of like the best of both worlds for both people.
mhm,
And that, to me, like, those are the kinds of tests in relationships that I want to be a part of, to say,
right,
like, let's move through this together,
mhm.
and see where we're at on the other end.
Yeah, it's, um that co-creation thing, and
Mhm.
really, I was I don't know about your college experience, because I didn't experience it much in high school, but group work, right?
Mm.
It never, there was always someone that you just wanted to like kill by,
Yeah,
by
who just
by the
like
end of it.
shows up and
Right,
then, gets the same grade as you do.
right.
Yeah.
And it's like that really, what does that co-creation really look like? Is that something that we are fostering? Because we can't just put people in a group and say, hey, you're doing this together, and that's, what lessons have you learned, right?
Yeah.
Because that's, in many cases, that wasn't, the intention or the purpose, right? The
Mhm.
purpose was, this is the project, complete the project.
Mhm.
I don't care how you, I don't care how you do it,
Right.
right?
It's like you
Type
gotta
of thing.
get there, but
Right.
just, make it happen.
And so there, like I said, there was always, like you said, that there are these front facing and, players that it's like, okay, someone's going to take the lead,
Mhm.
and the followers, and someone's going to be a slack ass, right? It's like, no matter who it is, it's like, soon as you
Mhm.
get a group together, it's like, all right, where are the roles? Right? You're like looking for them,
Right.
right?
Yeah, like who's gonna do what this time?
Right, and I think that is, the test. It's kind of, what's coming up for me is that, there's in self-help, right? The conversation around self-help or
Mhm.
personal development. There's, we use words like doing the work.
Mhm.
And for me, I'm trying to understand, is that is that the same thing as testing?
Mm.
Because sometimes me because sometimes doing the work, there are sometimes, but I don't want to say I'm a little slow, but there's sometimes it takes a little thing to realize, oh, okay, this is what's going on right now.
Mhm.
But there is sometimes where I'm quote unquote doing the work, that it was like, oh wow, I didn't know that I was doing the work. I just kind of followed this. Um, and then there may be a lesson learned, or there may be something that I'm aware of and that I'm willing to deal with. But it's I'm trying to connect. Is that it's just a series of tests? Is that's what the work is?
Yeah. Interesting. I hmm, possibly. Like
Mm,
I think that but maybe not.
okay.
Because I think that with when you're doing the work, there's sort of this space of how do I say this? Hmm. And so this is me processing, right? It's
Okay,
like
got it.
I can't think and talk at the same time.
Right, right. No, I totally get it. My problem is I do think and talk at the same time. That's it's
Yeah. It's funny. I listened to our last show and because like sometimes I do that. I decide, oh, let me hear myself. Am I making any sense whatsoever? And I could not stand it. And
it was great.
it was great, but at the same time, I felt like I was saying the word like so like every other word.
Right.
And I couldn't stand it. But the whole reason I am saying that is because when you're doing the work, and I guess that's a perfect experience of when you're trying to break a habit. So for me, it's that idea of slowing down and giving myself the space to communicate what I want to communicate without just saying words to fill space.
Right.
And doing that work is less about testing, I think, and more about taking the test completely out of the equation, because there's
Mm,
no real there's no real measurement that I'm going for except for the end goal,
right.
if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. I'm catching up. Right. Yes. I
And
get it.
I think that testing is more so you're looking for sort of to reach an already maybe desired or well, yeah, to reach a desired outcome, right?
Right.
And if you don't reach that outcome, you fail. And if you do reach that outcome, you pass.
Right.
But there's something about that because doing the work, if you have an intention and a goal in mind,
Right.
essentially would be then testing.
Right.
But there's something about that that doesn't quite it doesn't quite sit with my experience of personal growth work, where
Right.
I think
Got it.
sometimes the discoveries are almost happy accidents
Right. Got it.
rather than it's, and I guess for me, a lot of my personal growth work has been sort of releasing that need to always know or to always have a plan. And
Right.
because I am a planner, and
Got it.
that has been some of my biggest life lessons of how you can plan for something and it cannot go that way at all. And so,
Right.
what do you do then with that experience that you've received?
I think I just got for myself why I even said that doing the work is part of the test.
Okay.
Is that a test? And the reason why it's like my relationship to my intentions.
Mm,
And so it's like replace intentions for me
mhm,
to tests. This is my test for today.
mm,
And it's like the intention for this conversation was, lovable, to see how lovable shows up.
mm,
And in my mind is, okay, that was my intention. Let's see at the end of the day or in this end of this conversation if I allow that to come up. If I believe that my intentions were not met, I've failed the test. I've felt the
mhm.
intentions.
Yeah.
It's like I have created my life this series of pass and fail. And it's just that it feels like that has to end, right? It's
Mm,
just and
yeah.
it is just because I just like I there were sometimes I have been saying that I want to get a practicality to my intentions, because I would say my intention for today is to be more lovable, or just
Mm,
or just saying that, and it's just, what the hell does that mean, right? I had no
yes.
connection to any of that.
And so one of my yoga teachers who trained me gave me this little nugget of wisdom on intentions without actions are just words.
Hmm.
And so I think the difference though between having that be a test and having it just be action is that your intention, so for example, to be lovable,
Right.
um everyone is lovable, period, because we
Right.
exist.
Right.
Right?
Got it.
So so, and this is something that I struggle with and am intentionally focusing and shifting for myself, especially this month, is this idea of worthiness that like once I reach a certain level of income, or once I have my apartment looking a certain way, or
Right.
once I reach a certain weight, like then I'll find the partner of my dreams, because then I'm worthy of love.
Right.
And really, that's a lie, because
Hmm.
you're literally born, you're a pile of just germs and like
I was like, what the, where'd that cute baby go?
cells,
Right.
and right, and it's like, oh my
Right.
god, babies are the freaking cutest. But like you love them so much because they're so vulnerable.
Hmm.
And and it is that element that like that still exists. Like we live and we die, and like whatever happens in between, if we don't turn into sociopathic murderers, we're still lovable.
That's another show. It's like, okay, how to not turn into a sociopathical, murderer, right? You are
Seriously.
lovable. Don't turn into a murderer.
Right, let the love in.
That's the test, right?
Yeah, how to not turn into sociopathic murderer in this life.
That's hilarious.
So as long as you pass that test, you're good. All the other tests are just,
They're just
gravy.
that's right. That is great.
Oh
I
my
love it.
God.
You know what I am just experiencing right now is
Mhm.
you watching this show after we're done, because
Uh-huh.
you're like, it's like, what was I thinking when I said?
Yeah, like what an analogy. Oh
Oh
my goodness.
boy, that's wonderful. I think we can talk about this for hours, but there's a part of me that says, I'm sure there's a series of tests that you need to take for the. It's like,
Right.
but is there anything that anything else? Because the murderer thing, that was golden. Anything else? Any other insight that's come up because of
Yeah.
this conversation?
I think that for me, the idea of um, being lovable and being put through a series of tests by someone, or in reverse, testing someone to prove their worthiness,
Right,
are really bad habits that
right,
we internalize. And it doesn't mean to not have boundaries. It doesn't mean to not have needs and express those needs and express those desires.
right,
But it's, to me, giving more people the grace of um, that we all have different levels of consistency, and we all have different levels of stress.
right,
And when someone can consistently show up for you, even if they're also going through some stress or challenge, but they're willing to like meet you in
right,
that space. And like you said, figure it out together. Like, how do we get through this together?
right.
That is really what, from a practical practicing standpoint, is something that I really want to adopt.
Mm,
And, um, really letting go of this idea of, if somebody deserves to be in my life or in my world,
right.
then they have to pass these series of tests. And I think that that really discredits the space for growth that happens when we learn with someone, not
Mm,
just, I've learned this lesson. Have you? It's more, okay, can we learn this together?
right. And I think it's what's come up for me is, I think that's the criteria. if within that relationship, partnership, that there is not an element of co-creation, then I
Hmm.
don't need to be in this relationship. It has
Right.
nothing to do with, there's no other tests, but that is like a gauge to kind of go through something together.
Hmm.
And for me, that's, co-creating, that's intimacy, right? Right.
Totally.
That's,
Yeah.
that's it. So
Mhm.
thank you very much. I'll see you
Yeah.
in April, right?
Absolutely.
But this has been great. Thank you very much, Abby. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, and thank you so much, William, for creating this show and inviting me on. Really just putting an open invitation out there, and I felt really called.
Mm.
And this has been something that, as funny as it is that I am now sort of the resident guest,
Right.
it really, every time I have these conversations with you, I learn so much about uh, not only my own perspective, but like how to really just explore with someone.
Hmm.
And I really admire you for that, William, in the sense that you've created this platform where people really get to explore, and
Hmm.
it's a gem. I love
Right.
it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm embracing that. I'm just kind of taking that in. So, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
The tests, yeah, sometimes when words come to me, I just, like I said, I never know. In my relationship with tests, I would always feel that, I wasn't a good test taker, and as as I said with my mom, I was always testing her, and so I've learned that, and I try not to test people, but to really be in a place of co-creation. That's that's the key. I really got that. I really hope this conversation has brought value not just to your day, but to your life. I invite you to reach out to me at iamwilliambrown.com, a place to help you be yourself and live your life, for an introductory coaching session. Because the world wants you, the world needs you, but the world isn't waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you next time on One Word Conversations.